when seeing what she does. The air inside the Hawthorne estate was always still, so still it made even the softest sound feel like a disruption. Dust never lingered on its marble surfaces, and silence filled the long, echoing halls like a second coat of paint. That morning, the quiet was broken only by the faint sweep of a cloth gliding across the grand staircase's polished railing. Sophie Whitmore moved with practiced care, her motions gentle and precise. Sunlight from the high windows caught in her blonde braid. The hem of her gray cotton dress brushed just above her ankles as she crouched to polish the banister. Her shoes were simple, black, and worn. She wore no jewelry, no perfume, nothing that called attention to herself. Even her presence felt like a whisper. She had been here almost a month. Hired on trial as a live-in maid, Sophie was as invisible as she was efficient. She worked before the others woke, cleaned rooms no one entered anymore, and kept to herself during staff breaks. She didn't speak unless spoken to, didn't complain about heavy loads, and never once asked for help. But what struck everyone, especially those who'd worked at the estate for years, was that she never accepted tips. Not from Harold, the elderly chauffeur known to slip a $5 bill into new hands. Not from Margaret, the head housekeeper who admired Sophie's quiet diligence and once tucked cash into a stack of folded linens. Each time, Sophie's answer was the same. A soft, grateful smile and a quiet, "Thank you, but I can't take this." It might have seemed admirable to most, but to Liam Hawthorne, it was a red flag. Behind sleek black doors on the top floor, in a room lined with models and city blueprints, Liam stood in front of a large screen split into 4 live feeds, security cameras covering the estate's main rooms. His eyes were fixed on one. Sophie in the dining room, wiping the table as sunlight pooled across the floor like syrup. "She doesn't take tips," Liam said flatly. Beside him, Daniel, his longtime assistant, looked up from his tablet. "No, I saw that too. She's been solid, quiet. No complaints from anyone." Liam didn't respond right away. He leaned closer to the screen, watching her adjust the silver centerpiece, and paused to straighten a chair that was already perfectly aligned. Her movements weren't rushed. She cared about things no one else noticed. "That's what bothers me," Liam said. Daniel raised a brow. "That she's good at her job?" "That she's too good," Liam replied. "Too perfect, too careful." He turned toward the window overlooking the garden. "When I was a kid," he said quietly, "we had a maid who felt like family. She made me cocoa when I was sick, read to me. Then one day she emptied the safe and disappeared." Daniel stayed silent. He'd heard fragments of this story before. Liam continued, "My father said it was a lesson. Don't trust people who seem too humble. The ones who smile the easiest lie the best." Daniel glanced back at the screen. Sophie was now collecting her cloths, as precise as ever. "Maybe she's just decent," he offered. Liam's jaw tightened. "Or maybe she's patient, playing the long game." He turned back to the screen, expression unreadable. "It's not enough that she won't take money. I want to see what she does when she thinks no one's watching. Not when it's easy to be good, but when it's not." Daniel frowned. "You're going to test her?" Liam nodded. "She's lasted a month," he said. "Let's see what happens when kindness isn't convenient." And for the first time since Sophie Whitmore arrived, Liam Hawthorne felt something foreign. Uncertainty. The living room of the Hawthorne estate was dressed in quiet elegance, high ceilings, floor-length curtains swaying gently with the afternoon breeze, and warm sunlight casting gold across the parquet floors. Everything had been arranged carefully that day, more carefully than usual. On the large oak coffee table lay a leather wallet, a Patek Philippe watch, and a neat stack of $100 bills, loosely held by a gold money clip. The setup looked casual, almost accidental, but it wasn't. Liam Hawthorne lay motionless on the velvet sofa nearby, his shirt sleeves rolled just enough to show the expensive cufflinks at his wrists. His head rested against the cushion, eyes closed, breath steady. Every detail was deliberate, his posture, his breathing, the way his hand dangled over the edge. as though sleep had caught him mid-thought. But Liam was wide awake. Behind the framed artwork on the far wall, a discreet security camera recorded everything. He had checked the angles, ensured nothing was obstructed. Today, he wasn't trusting his instincts. Today, he was gathering proof. He listened to the faint ticking of the wall clock. 2:47 p.m. Right on time. He heard the soft tread of shoes outside the room, a gentle knock on the open doorway. Silence, then footsteps. Sophie Whitmore. She entered with the same quiet presence that had begun to unsettle him, gentle, unobtrusive, yet unmistakably aware. She wore her usual muted gray dress and a simple white apron. Her hair was braided again, a few strands falling softly around her face. She moved with purpose, though today her steps seemed slower, more deliberate. Liam resisted the urge to peek. He kept his breathing even, eyes relaxed behind lowered lids. Her footsteps stopped. She had seen the items on the table. He waited. No sound at first. Then, the faintest intake of breath. Her steps resumed, but not toward the table. She moved behind the sofa, dusting the baseboard, then crossed to the sideboard and adjusted a vase of lilies. She worked methodically, carefully, ignoring the obvious temptation inches from the man who appeared asleep. Still, Liam could feel it, her gaze. She had seen the money. She had looked. He counted. 1, 2, 3 seconds. Then, another pause. The room felt heavier with each breath he took. Would she reach for it? Would she pocket a bill and pretend nothing happened? Then came the sound of gentle brushing. The cloth in her hand skimmed the table's edge. She moved closer, but not to steal. She was cleaning. He felt the faint shift of air as she passed him, careful not to disturb his sleep. She collected the empty teacup he had left earlier, wiped the tabletop, repositioned the coaster. Still, she hadn't touched the money. Liam's heart beat louder than it should, louder than he wanted. Then came the moment he hadn't expected. Sophie paused. Her hand hovered near the bills, not touching, not trembling. Just still. Then, she reached for a hardcover book from the shelf behind the couch, a novel he'd once left out and never finished. Without a word, she placed it gently on top of the money, as if shielding it from view. Not out of fear, not shame, but as if no one should see something so tempting left unattended. Liam felt something flicker inside him. She turned and walked softly to the armchair nearby. From it, she picked up a folded throw blanket, light, soft, unused, and approached him. He wanted to stop her, say something, open his eyes, but he didn't. Not as she gently unfolded the blanket. Not as she leaned over and tucked it lightly across his chest and shoulders. Not as her fingers brushed a lock of hair from his forehead, an action so tender it belonged in another life. And then, she whispered, so low, it felt almost like a prayer. "Thank you for giving me this job. I won't let you down." Liam's throat tightened. For the first time in years, the walls he had built, stone by stone, reason by reason, cracked. Just slightly. But enough for something real to slip through. He lay still long after she had gone, eyes still closed, the weight of the blanket heavier than before, not in fabric, but in meaning. For a man who had trusted nothing but control, the honesty of a woman who didn't know she was being watched was the most disarming thing of all. Liam sat alone in his office, the room dim except for the soft blue glow of the security screen in front of him. The footage looped in silence, the same few minutes, over and over. There she was. Sophie. He watched her enter the living room. Pause. Her gaze fell on the items he'd left out, the wallet, the watch, the neat stack of bills, and then on him, asleep on the sofa. Her eyes lingered, not with greed, not even curiosity, but something softer, thoughtful, cautious. Then, the book, the blanket, the whisper. Liam leaned forward, studying every detail. The way she smoothed the corner of the blanket, the way she looked at him, not like a CEO, but simply a man. That quiet tenderness unsettled him more than anything she could have said. And still he couldn't stop watching. Her voice echoed faintly in his mind. "Thank you for giving me this job. I won't let you down." For the first time in years, Liam Hawthorne wasn't sure what to feel. He wanted to dismiss it. Maybe she saw the camera. Maybe it was all an act. But deep down, he knew better. There had been no performance in her eyes. It was real. And it left him shaken. The next day, passing by the kitchen, he slowed when he saw her alone, wiping down the counters. She didn't notice him. Her movements were steady, quiet. She paused only to fold a dish towel with precise care, placing it perfectly over the oven handle. Liam stood in the shadows a moment longer than necessary, then moved on without a word. Later that week, the sky had fallen into a deep navy hue when Liam spotted the old Rolls-Royce parked under the far tree. Inside, Harold, their long-serving chauffeur, had dozed off, glasses slipping down his nose. Then Sophie appeared. She moved quietly to the car, opened the door gently, and retrieved the knitted blanket from behind the seat. With practiced care, she tucked it over Harold's shoulders and adjusted it so it wouldn't fall. Then, silently, she closed the door and walked away. Liam watched from the upstairs window, exhaling softly, the glass fogging under his breath. It wasn't just one gesture. This was who she was. In the days that followed, Liam began to see more. A dusty photograph of his mother, long forgotten, was suddenly clean, its silver frame gleaming. A leaky faucet stopped dripping. A small note in delicate handwriting appeared by the back door. "Left extra fruit in the fridge for Mrs. Green. She's been craving peaches." It was signed only with a tiny, hand-drawn flower. No recognition, no announcement. Just quiet acts of care. Then came the night he would remember for a long time. Liam returned late from a business meeting, jacket slung over one arm. As he crossed the hallway toward the garden, he noticed someone sitting on the stone bench just beyond the glass door. Sophie? She was hunched slightly, arms wrapped around herself. Her phone rested in her lap. Even from a distance, he saw her shoulders trembling. He opened the door slightly, enough to hear a muffled sob. Then nothing. She wiped her face with her sleeve, inhaled slowly, and whispered something he couldn't make out. He didn't step outside, didn't interrupt. He just watched, unseen, as she steadied herself and quietly walked back inside. The next morning, Liam woke before sunrise. He entered the kitchen before the staff arrived, brewed tea, and reached into his desk drawer for a plain white envelope. He placed it beneath Sophie's usual teacup on the tray. Inside, a modest sum, enough for what she needed. On the envelope, a single line written in his careful, slanted hand. "Do not refuse. It's your salary in advance." He didn't sign it. When Sophie found it later, her fingers trembled. She looked around the quiet kitchen. The tea was still warm. She said nothing, and no one said anything to her. But behind a closed office door, Liam sat with his untouched coffee, staring out at the garden, his thoughts louder than any words could have been. It wasn't the money. It wasn't guilt. It was something else. Something like the beginning of trust. Or maybe the beginning of something he had forgotten how to feel. It happened on a Thursday. The estate was unusually busy that day, filled with the clinking of silverware and low hum of conversation as Liam hosted a private luncheon for a few longtime investors. The air was crisp, the staff moved like clockwork, and everything, down to the folds in the linen napkins, was exactly as it should be. Until it wasn't. Midway through the event, a guest, a well-dressed woman in her early 50s with too much perfume and a sharp tongue, stood from her chair and held up a small, folded piece of white cloth. "Excuse me," she called out, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Someone dropped this, or should I say, tried to leave it behind?" Heads turned. Mrs. Eleanor Crestmore held the handkerchief up like it was a piece of evidence. Her expression was one of theatrical disdain. "I found it under the chair in the guest lounge, right where Mr. Duval had been sitting. She sniffed. It smells of lavender and something else, very deliberate. Liam looked up from the end of the table, brows furrowed. Margaret, the head housekeeper,